credits used properly will mean jobs for decades.
Those jobs Governor Nixon was referring to 5 years ago are the 800 jobs promised to the state by IBM when the company opened a facility in Columbia back in 2010.
In return, the company would get more than $28 million in tax breaks. But tonight, IBM has not fulfilled that promise, and some of those state incentives were suspended just weeks ago. And that's not the only thing we've learned. Some jobs are being created, but they may not be going to the people you think.
ABC 17's Jillian Fertig first reported on the mass layoffs at the Columbia facility back in January and has been covering the story since. Jillian?
Well, Joey, when I filed my report in January, IBM would not release those employment numbers. Now, tonight, I not only have those numbers, which fall way short of 800, but both current and former employees tell me they want the taxpayers to know the truth about what's really going on behind closed doors at IBM.
Payback is striking. I mean, the amount of tax revenue we'll get by this economic activity will make this a very shrewd investment on our part.
Bought for $3 million by the city of Columbia and leased to IBM for $1 a year. The facility on Lamone Industrial Boulevard was expected to boost the local economy by providing jobs. But after 3 rounds of rumored layoffs, I started digging around. In January, a spokesman for IBM said the company layoffs were part of a $600 million restructuring, but he would not provide job numbers. I then filed an open records request with the Missouri Department of Economic Development. After several of my calls and emails went unanswered, the department finally provided me with documents putting the current number of employees at the Columbia facility at just 453. And that's down from 610 in January of 2014. In a letter from DED dated April 22nd, the department informs IBM that, quote, reducing the number of jobs at the Columbia facility below 500 constitutes a suspension event, end quote, meaning the state will no longer be giving tax credits under the Missouri Build program. I went back to Columbia Mayor Bob McDavid, who was a big supporter of IBM coming to Columbia in 2010, to ask him whether he thought IBM kept its promises.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on your perspective. You know, is the glass half full or half empty? Because I would submit that if you could go back to the year 2010 and say we're going to bring in an international global company with 450 employees, I would think the city would have been delighted about that. They are not required to be transparent with the city. You know, for example, I have no business knowing what your salary is. I mean, you're a private employee.
But do you feel like maybe that's a little, misleading to the taxpayers? I mean, this was a big deal for Columbia.
Well, now let me just say this. They do have an obligation to the state of Missouri, whereas our obligation simply was that they had to pay for fixing up the building.
I also got in touch with an IBM spokesman by phone who initially insisted the company met all state requirements.
You know, we don't publicly discuss staffing numbers, but we've met all state and local reporting requirements, and that's really much what we're going to be saying.
Well, but according to the letter, it says you're not, so they had suspended them for the time being for the state credits for the Missouri Build.
Well, you know, for the incentives which IBM qualified, we lived up to those obligations.
Just not the build incentives?
Correct.
I asked more questions to try to find out about the future of IBM in Columbia, but the phone call stops there.
I'll come back to you when I have something to tell you.
But IBM employees in Columbia, both current and former, say they have something to tell. One employee whose voice has been concealed to protect their identity says the 453 number of employees at the facility is far from accurate.
It's hard to count 300 in the building at any one day. There are people that work from home, and some of those homes are not only not in Columbia, they're in different states. It looks as if they are here in Columbia. In reality, they're not.
2 other employees and a union leader for IBM employees told me similar things about the numbers. To get an idea of just how many people work out of the building, I went on a Monday afternoon and counted the cars in the parking lot. I started on the right side of the building and made my way to the back. We just finished counting this side of the lot. So far, we're at 98 cars. It took me about 15 minutes to account for every car in the lot.
It's 2:45 on a Monday afternoon, and I've just counted 164 cars in the parking lot. Now, that would mean there would have to be nearly 3 people in each car to equal that 453 employees that IBM says it has working at this facility.
The company says not everyone reports to the building on Mondays. That employee also talked to me about the most recent round of layoffs back in January.
Everyone in the building knew something was up. Everyone. And then when all the strangers showed up with the packets, others walking around, looking out over the employees that were there, keeping track, everybody knew that was the day.
But this employee says while the layoffs are concerning, they say it's what the company is doing to replace those workers who are laid off that's disturbing.
IBM will bring Indian people over here to work.
So you're saying they're replacing American workers with foreign workers?
In the case of training the folks from India to do whatever the person is doing here, that would be an accurate statement because that's exactly what's happening.
Another employee who did not want their voice to be recorded tells me the same thing. They say some people in the building are currently training the foreign worker who will take over for them when they finish their last day. The union also says the company has been doing this and even has a page on its website where an employee can confidentially submit information if they are training their offshore replacement. The same allegations have been made at the IBM facility just 300 miles away in Dubuque, Iowa. In fact, U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley even sent a letter to IBM questioning why the company was petitioning for H-1B visas when it just laid off hundreds of American workers from the Dubuque facility. IBM told an Iowa newspaper last month, quote, in order to serve the evolving technology needs of clients in high-growth areas such as cloud computing, data analytics, mobile, social, and security, IBM and tech industry must utilize a global talent pool. Today, there are simply not enough American workers with expertise in these areas to fill the thousands of U.S. jobs IBM currently has available. I've been in regular contact with Senator Grassley's office. I'm told his office has gotten a response to the letter, but the contents of that response letter are not being made available to the media yet. I asked Mayor McDavid about this same thing.
But are those concerning allegations, that they're...
Well, again, I don't know anything about them, and again, it's just I don't have any control over who your media company hires. I'd love it if they hired Mizzou graduates or Hickman or Rockbridge graduates, but they're free to hire people from Arizona, right? So that's just the way the world works, and we have to be able to compete on that basis.
I reached out to several lawmakers, including Missouri Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler, whose district includes the IBM plant. Her office says it's aware of the concern that American workers are possibly being replaced at IBM with foreign workers. I'm told her office has been in communication with Senator Grassley's office about his proposed legislation regarding stricter H-1B visa laws. While government leaders at the state and local level may or may not know about what could be going on behind closed doors, IBM employees say the reason they're coming forward is because the taxpayers have a right to know.
Unless the state of Missouri, grabs themselves by the bootstraps and says this is taxpayer money, this is not some sort of fluff money from Washington, nothing's going to happen.
Although the state of Missouri has suspended some of those tax credits, here's a look at how much money IBM has gotten in state tax incentives. Under the Missouri Quality Jobs Program, $3.9 million. Under the now suspended build incentives, $4.1 million. And they've also received nearly $2 million for training, bringing the total to just under $10 million.
Jillian, thank you.